Millionaire forced his wife to abort their baby for his mistress years later. Karma destroyed him. In the glimmering world of high society, where money moves mountains and reputations are as shiny as priceless gems, one man's insatiable hunger for power and pleasure would set off a chain of events that shook everyone around him. Benedict Stone, a self-made millionaire with a magnetic presence, had it all: a sprawling estate, a lucrative business empire, and a wife whose gentle heart adored him. Yet beneath the polished facade, dark secrets festered. One fateful decision to force his own wife to abort their unborn child for the sake of his mistress would sow the seeds of unimaginable karma. This is their story. Benedict Stone was known throughout the elite circles of New York City as a man of impeccable taste and unstoppable ambition. Some said he could charm the stripes off a tiger. He had grown his technology startup, Stone Innovations, from a cramped studio in Queens to a multi-million-dollar enterprise with offices in Manhattan's sleekest skyscrapers. He drove a pearly white Rolls-Royce Phantom, owned a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, and threw lavish parties at the Ritz-Carlton, where celebrities mingled with captains of industry. Money rolled in so effortlessly, it seemed as though fortune itself was enthralled by him. But behind the glitz was a less conspicuous story: the unswerving devotion of his wife, Cassandra Stone. Cassandra was once a bright-eyed graduate student at Columbia University, studying literature and dreaming of becoming a best-selling author. They met at a charity gala, where she, volunteering for a literacy program, was assigned to greet guests. Benedict took one look at the graceful young woman whose eyes seemed filled with genuine warmth and was instantly smitten. Her gentle spirit was a welcome contrast to the relentless power-chasing crowd he moved in, and she found his confidence intoxicating. Their courtship was swift. Benedict dazzled her with weekend trips to Napa Valley, front-row seats at Broadway shows, and private dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. When he proposed, slipping a diamond solitaire on her finger under the glow of the Eiffel Tower during a business trip to Paris, she had been too enchanted to think twice. Life with Benedict was a dream at first, full of adventure, intellectual stimulation, and unwavering support for her personal goals. If there were ever hints of arrogance or an insatiable desire for more wealth, more applause, more conquests, Cassandra dismissed them as mere eccentricities of a driven man. For the first few years of their marriage, Benedict showered Cassandra with affectionate gestures. He funded her writing retreats, cheered her on during conferences, and even helped secure an agent for her budding manuscript. She felt like the luckiest woman in the world. Behind the scenes, though, his business expanded at an alarming rate. Stone Innovations scored massive contracts with Fortune 500 clients, and Benedict frequently traveled to Silicon Valley, London, and Tokyo to explore global partnerships. Each success fueled his hunger for greater achievements. Amid the professional whirlwind, Benedict began encountering people who fed his ego. Wall Street bankers wooed him with exclusive investment deals, while socialites vied to be included on his party guest lists. He was the man to know, the one who could open doors everywhere, from the upper echelons of politics to the executive suites of media conglomerates. No one dared to deny him anything. One day, Cassandra noticed subtle changes in her husband. He started speaking over her at dinner parties, dismissing her ideas with a wave of his hand. He grew impatient with her creative pursuits, occasionally belittling her modest book sales. "Your writing is admirable, darling," he'd say, "but the real money is in business. Maybe it's time to expand your horizons." Cassandra brushed off his remarks, attributing his moodiness to the pressure of orchestrating multi-million-dollar deals. But there was an undercurrent of arrogance that she could no longer ignore. When they attended a gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, She overheard him discussing her as though she was merely an accessory, praising her beauty while ignoring her intelligence. The sting of that moment lingered, but she remained convinced that deep down, Benedict loved her. After all, this was the man who had once risked his schedule and money to make her dreams come true. When Cassandra discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed, imagining that motherhood would be the next beautiful chapter in their marriage. She had always loved children, frequently volunteering at after-school programs in underprivileged neighborhoods. As soon as the pregnancy test showed positive, she purchased a small pair of knitted booties to surprise Benedict pink and blue. Since they didn't yet know the baby's sex, she decorated a corner of their pristine penthouse with a handful of baby items, a stuffed teddy bear, a rattle, and a baby journal where she planned to record every milestone. Benedict's initial reaction was guarded. He offered a polite congratulations but seemed preoccupied, as though the news presented an inconvenience rather than a source of joy. Cassandra tried to rationalize it. He was busy with a major merger and dealing with the complexities of an expanding empire. Still, beneath his carefully controlled facade, an unsettled tension sparked. Every time she mentioned prenatal appointments or the future nursery, he changed the subject to a more pressing business matter. Her intuition whispered that something was off, but she kept telling herself that Benedict would come around. He would hold her hand at the ultrasound, see the flicker of their baby's heartbeat, and realize how miraculous it all was. She envisioned him boasting to business associates about becoming a father and planning a grand baby shower at the Plaza Hotel. None of it panned out. Instead, each day, his distant behavior grew more pronounced, and Cassandra was left feeling an odd mix of anticipation and heartbreak. She turned to her journals, writing about her confusion, her hope, and her fleeting moments of joy whenever she remembered the tiny life growing inside her. Little did she know that the darkest storm in her life was about to descend. Their social circle was vast, and at nearly every high-profile event, Benedict was introduced to countless glamorous people. Among them, there was one woman who stood out, Vanessa Harrington. She was an heiress to a real estate dynasty, with a figure that turned heads and a wit sharp enough to slice through any room's tension. Vanessa, like Benedict, thrived in environments where wealth and power reigned supreme. She was introduced to him at a private investors' dinner hosted by Chase Bank, and by the end of the night, the two of them were ensconced in a corner, talking animatedly about global markets, philanthropic ventures, and exotic travel. Cassandra was present at that event, though she spent most of the evening feeling faint from her early pregnancy symptoms. She managed to catch glimpses of Benedict and Vanessa's intense conversation, which seemed friendlier than typical business banter. Later that evening, when Cassandra mentioned Vanessa, Benedict brushed it off. "Just a business contact," he said with a dismissive shrug. Still, Cassandra couldn't shake off a pang of jealousy. Vanessa was confident, stunningly beautiful, and brimming with the kind of ambition that easily matched Benedict's. As the weeks went by, Vanessa's name popped up more often. A philanthropic conference in Geneva, a property investment deal in Dubai, a new philanthropic fund aimed at youth education where both Benedict and Vanessa were listed as principal sponsors. Cassandra began to notice the way Benedict would grow animated whenever Vanessa's name surfaced in conversation, though he seldom brought it up around Cassandra. It took some digging and eavesdropping on phone calls for her to piece together just how frequently the two were meeting. The more she learned, the more a sinking dread blossomed within her, threatening the fragile peace she clung to in her marriage. Tension in the Stone household escalated at a maddening pace. Cassandra began noticing small but telling changes in Benedict's routine. He spent longer hours at the office, often missing dinner without a courtesy text. On weekends, he vanished for urgent business trips that conveniently aligned with Vanessa's philanthropic schedules. In their lavish penthouse, the closeness they once shared was replaced by an uneasy quiet that unnerved Cassandra more than any shouting match could have. Her suspicions transformed into sleepless nights and tear-stained pillows. She tried to confront Benedict, but he deflected every query. "I'm expanding globally," he'd say. "This is what success looks like: sacrifices and more sacrifices." Feeling the weight of her pregnancy, Cassandra grew more anxious. She wanted her husband's support, especially when the doctor advised her to reduce stress to protect her unborn baby's health. Yet Benedict's attention seemed forever drifting, his glances out the window as though searching for something more exciting than home. In a moment of desperation, Cassandra confided in her old college friend, Marisol, who advised her to follow her intuition and gather proof. One afternoon, after Benedict left for an alleged business meeting, Cassandra found flight itineraries to Monaco, Vanessa's frequent holiday destination, hidden in his drawer. She confronted him with the evidence, voice trembling as she demanded an explanation. A brief flash of guilt crossed Benedict's face, but he quickly covered it with a scornful sneer. "I do what I must for the company," he replied coolly, his gaze as cold as steel. When she pressed further, tears brimming, he tightened his lips and refused to discuss it. The confrontation ended in stony silence. Cassandra sat alone in the living room, her mind swirling with doubts, heartbreak, and an inexplicable sense of impending doom. The blow struck one evening when Benedict returned home unusually early. Cassandra had just finished preparing a simple dinner, thinking maybe they could talk civilly for once. Instead, he strode into the penthouse, eyes glinting with a strange mixture of resentment and determination. Without a preamble, he demanded that Cassandra terminate the pregnancy. Stunned, she could only stare at him in disbelief. "This is not the right time," Benedict insisted, pacing back and forth with agitation. "I have so many major deals in the pipeline, and I can't have any distractions, especially not one that will tie me down." His voice cracked with a disquieting fervor. Cassandra's tears began to flow almost instantly, but he remained unmoved. "Do you even care what this does to me?" she pleaded, her trembling hands on her stomach. "Do you care about our child?" In response, Benedict's voice darkened. He went on to elaborate how he had plans that extended far beyond a traditional family life. He needed freedom to travel, to meet important clients, and expand his empire. He coldly announced that the baby would only complicate everything. He insisted they could try again later, under more favorable circumstances. That night, Cassandra experienced a heartbreak so profound it felt like a physical assault. She sobbed for hours, hugging her belly as though to shield the tiny life inside. She couldn't fathom how the man she once adored, who had once acted so enamored by her dreams, could so callously demand she rid herself of the child they had created together. The next morning, she awakened to find a note from Benedict, instructing her to arrange the procedure and avoid any unnecessary delays. His directive landed like a death sentence on her heart, extinguishing any hope she'd clung to. In the subsequent days, Cassandra's mental and emotional state spiraled downward. She could barely eat or sleep. Her mind refused to settle as it warred between her instinct to protect her unborn child and the grim reality that her husband, who held all the financial power, was intent on seeing the pregnancy end. Even so, she tried to resist. She visited an old mentor, Dr. Elaine Mitchell, who had been her favorite professor at Columbia. Dr. Mitchell offered comforting words, urging Cassandra to consider her own well-being above everything else. When Cassandra attempted to push back against Benedict's demand, he unleashed a torrent of emotional manipulation. He threatened to cut her off financially, to ruin her reputation among their influential social circle, and even to humiliate her by airing private details of her past. The idea of standing up against Benedict, a titan with enough resources to bury her in court battles, seemed impossible. In the swirl of confusion, her close friend Marisol quietly helped her search for legal options. Could she divorce Benedict and keep the child? Was there a way to protect herself from his wrath? But each scenario ended with the same dire conclusion. Benedict's power was near absolute, and Cassandra feared that a nasty divorce could lead to prolonged emotional torment, or worse, push him to do something drastic. Exhausted and terrified, Cassandra found herself in a sterile clinic one Friday morning. Tears blurred her vision as she signed the paperwork, her heart pounding so loudly it roared in her ears. When she emerged hours later, she felt an unshakable emptiness in her body and soul. Outside, Benedict's limousine was waiting. His driver held the door open, but all Cassandra could do was stare into the tinted window, knowing that the man behind that glass had orchestrated the darkest day of her life. The days following the abortion were shrouded in a bleak haze for Cassandra. She felt hollow, lost, and riddled with guilt. Every so often, she imagined what could have been, the baby's first cry, their tiny fingers curling around hers, the sweet coos that bring a new mother indescribable joy. But in those memories that never were, a torrent of anguish swept through her, and she would retreat to the penthouse bedroom, refusing to eat or speak. Benedict, on the other hand, hardly acknowledged the aftermath. He resumed his relentless schedule, flights to Hong Kong, private meetings with foreign investors, luxurious galas with his mistress on his arm. On the rare occasions he was home, he treated Cassandra with distant politeness, as if she were merely a roommate. The uneasy truce in their penthouse was surreal, two strangers bound by marriage, but separated by a canyon of resentment and pain. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday, Cassandra reached her breaking point. She confronted Benedict as he packed yet another suitcase. Her voice trembled as she asked him if he felt even a shred of remorse for what had transpired. His reaction was chilling, a dismissive shrug followed by a condescending remark about how children can always happen later. It was then she realized there was no love left in him, at least not in the way she understood love. And so, Cassandra made a quiet, life-altering decision. She would no longer cling to a man who had crushed her spirit and erased her motherhood. Gathering the courage to leave was no simple feat, but a single thought propelled her forward, preserving what little sense of self she had left. She didn't yet know where she would go, or how she would survive without Benedict's financial safety net, but for the first time she felt a faint spark of hope rekindle in the ashes of her despair. Early one morning, Cassandra packed her essentials clothes, personal mementos, a stack of journals, and slipped out of the penthouse while Benedict was away on business. The doorman, accustomed to her comings and goings, gave her a polite nod, oblivious to the fact that she was leaving for good. She took a taxi across town to a modest boutique hotel, paying cash to avoid leaving a paper trail that Benedict's minions could easily trace. In that small, comfortable room, she finally allowed herself to grieve openly. She cried for the lost child, for the betrayal by the man she had once adored, and for the uncertain path that lay ahead. Over the next few days, she made a plan. First, she reached out to Marisol, who offered to let Cassandra stay at her studio apartment while she sorted out her next steps. Second, she contacted her literary agent, hoping to secure editing gigs or part-time writing assignments to earn some semblance of financial independence. Meanwhile, Benedict barely noticed her absence at first. His days were consumed with a flurry of meetings, culminating in a public announcement that Stone Innovations would be merging with an international conglomerate. The media celebrated him as a visionary, and business analysts speculated he was on track to become one of the wealthiest magnates in the country. He reveled in the attention, taking Vanessa along to red carpet events and high-profile functions. Only when a week passed without Cassandra's presence did Benedict send a terse message demanding to know her whereabouts. Cassandra didn't respond. She had made up her mind to proceed with a legal separation, if not an outright divorce. Though it terrified her to challenge a man with Benedict's vast resources, she had reached a place of emotional exhaustion where fear paled in comparison to her desire for freedom. Over the following months, Cassandra immersed herself in small freelance writing projects that offered a modest income but a vital sense of independence. Her new life was Spartan, no more penthouse views or designer gowns. Yet she found solace in simplicity. She wrote diligently, sometimes late into the night, exploring themes of loss, betrayal, and resilience. Writing became her therapy, each new paragraph a salve for her fractured soul. Simultaneously, she took steps to file for a legal separation. With Marisol's help, she located a lawyer who had once been an acquaintance from Columbia's law school. Though not an expert in high-profile divorces, he understood the complexities of going against someone like Benedict Stone. The lawyer advised caution, reminding Cassandra that Benedict's team would likely bury her under mounds of paperwork and intimidation tactics. In the social sphere, whispers began to circulate. People noticed Cassandra's absence from Benedict's side. Some tabloids speculated that she was on an extended retreat or battling an undisclosed illness. The rumor mill churned out wild stories of why she might have vanished so abruptly. Yet Benedict remained tight-lipped, focusing the public's attention on his blossoming affair with Vanessa and his ever-expanding empire. As for Vanessa, she was thrilled to have Benedict more or less to herself. She relished the spotlight, frequently photographed at Benedict's side at charity galas and exclusive social events. In public, they were the picture of glamour and success. Behind closed doors, however, Vanessa had her own ambitions, ones that involved leveraging Benedict's name and fortunes for her real estate aspirations. She played the devoted companion, but a cunning edge underlay each affectionate smile. She threw his way. Little did Benedict know that she, too, harbored secrets capable of rocking his world to its core. Back in the modest apartment, Cassandra's health began to improve. The trauma of the forced abortion weighed heavily on her, but she had found a therapist and attended weekly sessions that helped her process her grief and guilt. With every session, she felt stronger, more certain that leaving Benedict had been the right choice. She even managed to revive an old manuscript she'd nearly finished in her final year of college, polishing it with renewed vigor. One evening, while scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a photograph of Benedict and Vanessa at a lavish charity ball. Vanessa wore a glittering gown, her arm possessively looped through Benedict's. The caption praised their philanthropic efforts and hinted at an impending power engagement that would dominate the city's gossip columns. Cassandra felt a pang of anger and sorrow. Any lingering doubts she had about Benedict's character were dispelled by the sight of him parading the woman who contributed to the destruction of Cassandra's marriage. Yet, amid her pain, a deep sense of peace settled over her. She had survived one of the darkest experiences of her life, and she was resolute in forging a new path. Each day was a step forward, a few pages written, a legal document filed, a therapy session that unraveled more threads of her tangled emotions. Her lawyer warned her that Benedict might become hostile once divorce proceedings officially began. They braced for confrontation, gathering every piece of evidence and documentation that illustrated Cassandra's role as a loyal wife and Benedict's neglect. The story of the forced abortion, while difficult to prove in a court of law, carried a moral weight that might influence a judge's sympathies. Cassandra steeled herself, ready to face the legal storm in pursuit of her freedom and closure. The first flicker of Benedict's downfall appeared as a small crack in his pristine public image. One of his major product launches at Stone Innovations, a high-end smartphone that boasted unrivaled security, was discovered to have critical vulnerabilities. Clients threatened lawsuits, and competitors exploited the negative press. Though Benedict's PR team scrambled to contain the damage, investors grew skittish and the company's stock wavered. It was the kind of setback Benedict wasn't accustomed to, and his frustration simmered behind his carefully curated smile. Around the same time, rumors about his relationship with Vanessa began to sour among the business elite. She was seen at multiple real estate conventions, making deals that seemed suspiciously favorable. Speculations ran rampant that she was using her close ties to Benedict to push her family's real estate agenda, often at the expense of Stone Innovation's best interests. Benedict, besotted and arrogant, ignored the red flags. After all, Vanessa was an alluring partner who brought him more than enough prestige to keep his circle dazzled. But those closest to Benedict, his CFO, his legal advisor, and even some longtime board members started noticing Vanessa's manipulative tendencies. Documents would go missing, funds would be reallocated without clear authorization, and deals suddenly shifted to entities connected to Vanessa's family empire. Though they tried to warn Benedict, he dismissed them as overreacting. He was too entranced by Vanessa's charms to see the subtle sabotage. Meanwhile, Cassandra quietly prepared her legal approach, coordinating with her lawyer to finalize the divorce filing. She kept a close eye on the public controversies swirling around Benedict, wondering if she might be able to leverage his shaky reputation to secure a fair settlement. Little did she realize that destiny was orchestrating something far more dramatic than she could have ever planned. Underneath the surface, Vanessa's ambitions ran deeper than anyone fully understood. She was not content to be merely Benedict's glamorous companion. She envisioned a partnership of equals, or better yet of herself, in a superior position. Behind Benedict's back, she liaised with top executives from rival companies, forging alliances that would benefit her real estate ventures. Her family's empire had grown stagnant, overshadowed by Benedict's flamboyant successes, and she saw an opportunity to reinvigorate it using his wealth and connections. Simultaneously, Cassandra's divorce proceedings finally gained traction. The court summons arrived at Benedict's office on a busy Wednesday, flung onto his mahogany desk by a trembling intern. When Benedict realized the extent of Cassandra's claims, emotional abuse, forced medical decisions, and negligence, his face grew livid. But there was a twist. In the absence of a prenuptial agreement, Cassandra's lawyers requested a significant settlement. If successful, it could disrupt Benedict's business operations and personal finances. In his frustration, Benedict lashed out at his legal team, blaming them for failing to anticipate Cassandra's move. He ranted about how all his resources should go toward winning this absurd case. But behind closed doors, he felt a pang of insecurity. His empire was showing signs of stress, and now his personal life was on the brink of becoming a public scandal. Vanessa, for her part, pretended to be supportive, cooing reassurances while stoking the flames of his anger. She fed him the idea that Cassandra was merely seeking attention and money, convincing him to adopt an aggressive countersuit strategy. And so, like a chessboard on the verge of upheaval, the pieces moved toward an inevitable confrontation. Cassandra's determination to be free clashed with Benedict's ego and Vanessa's machinations, setting the stage for a tempest of retribution and downfall. One crisp morning, Cassandra was awakened by the buzz of her phone. A strange number flashed on the screen. Expecting another legal inquiry, she picked up, her heart pounding. Instead, she heard a hushed female voice on the other end. The woman introduced herself as Lydia from Stone Innovation's accounting department and claimed she had urgent information that might help Cassandra's case. Uncertain whether to trust this unexpected ally, Cassandra listened cautiously. Lydia explained that she had witnessed suspicious financial transactions and hush payments authorized by Benedict. One of these disbursements was linked to a private medical clinic, Aghast, Cassandra realized it might be the very clinic where her abortion had taken place. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces clicked. Benedict had orchestrated every detail down to the finances, ensuring there was a paper trail to keep Cassandra's secrets locked away or to blackmail her, should the need arise. Galvanized by this new lead, Cassandra arranged a discreet meeting with Lydia at a small cafe near Central Park. Lydia arrived disguised in oversized sunglasses, clutching a folder of documents. Carefully, she laid them out on the table. Each page revealed the extent of Benedict's involvement in controlling the narrative of Cassandra's abortion, as well as other questionable dealings. Cassandra could hardly contain her trembling hands as she read. Here was proof that Benedict had not only coerced her, but had gone to great lengths to cover it up. This was the ammunition Cassandra needed. She immediately passed the documents to her lawyer, who seemed both astonished and relieved. Their legal case now had a tangible backbone, a shining beacon of evidence. In that moment, Cassandra felt an odd mixture of triumph and deep sorrow, reminded yet again of the baby she had lost to Benedict's cruelty. She vowed to see justice served. While Cassandra bolstered her case with undeniable proof, Benedict was busy grappling with mounting troubles at Stone Innovations. The flawed smartphone had led to multiple lawsuits alleging negligence and misrepresentation. In parallel, a clandestine audit revealed questionable financial maneuvers tied to Vanessa's real estate ties. Tensions rose among shareholders. Rumors abounded that the board was considering a vote of no confidence in Benedict's leadership. Vanessa feigned concern, yet she continued to quietly siphon resources for her own ventures. She served as Benedict's confidant, but in truth, she was carving out her exit strategy. Her plan was clear. If Stone Innovations went under, she would emerge unscathed, with enough capital and connections to keep her family's empire thriving. She put on a facade of unwavering support, whispering sweet nothings to Benedict about their future. Deep down, she was counting the days until she could distance herself from the eventual ruin. In the midst of all this, Benedict's temper grew volatile. He was known to verbally berate employees, slam doors during board meetings, and even threaten journalists who dared to question Stone Innovations' direction. At one point, he tried to rally a public relations campaign to smear Cassandra, insinuating that she was a gold digger trying to sabotage him. However, Cassandra's dignified silence and the recent evidence she had secured dismantled his attempts. With each passing day, Benedict felt the walls closing in. The unstoppable success he had once enjoyed seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. Even the sparkle of Vanessa's company dimmed under the pressure. Though he clung to the idea that he could muscle his way out of every crisis, deep down, a fear gnawed at him. Karma, fueled by every ruthless decision he had made, was finally rearing its head, and he was ill-prepared for the reckoning. Meanwhile, Cassandra's life was undergoing a transformation she never thought possible. Though the divorce was still an ongoing battle, she began to see glimpses of who she could be without Benedict's overshadowing presence. Her freelance writing picked up pace. She landed a series of articles in reputable online magazines and slowly re-established herself in the literary community. A small publishing house expressed interest in her manuscript, a story that, ironically, explored themes of betrayal and personal rebirth. Socially, she ventured out more often, attending small gatherings of creative minds, open mic poetry nights, and charity book drives. She formed meaningful friendships with people who appreciated her for her intellect and kindness, not for her designer clothes or her proximity to a millionaire. Over coffee and late-night chats, she rediscovered the parts of herself that had been buried under Benedict's expectations. Marisol remained her steadfast ally, offering pep talks whenever Cassandra felt overwhelmed by the legal process. The two women would often relax in the cramped living room of Marisol's apartment, sipping tea and discussing everything from the potential divorce settlement to the next chapters in Cassandra's budding literary career. Every now and then, Cassandra still felt pangs of sadness for the child she lost and the marriage she'd believed would last forever. Yet, each day, the sorrow grew less suffocating, replaced by a cautious optimism. In therapy, Cassandra confronted the deeper scars left by Benedict's manipulation. She learned to forgive herself for what had happened, understanding that she'd been trapped in a toxic dynamic that even the strongest person might struggle to escape. Those sessions became a wellspring of healing, allowing her to step forward with renewed self-esteem. She realized she was no longer simply surviving, she was gradually reclaiming her life's narrative and charting a new, fearless course for her future. During one particularly tense week, Stone Innovation's board of directors convened an emergency meeting. Several shareholders demanded explanations for the legal troubles, financial inconsistencies, and the ballooning costs of Benedict's extravagant lifestyle. A hush fell over the boardroom as Benedict presented a hastily prepared slideshow, attempting to spin the situation in a positive light, but the facts were undeniable. Profits had dipped, the lawsuits were piling up, and critical partners were pulling out of deals because of the company's tarnished image. Midway through the meeting, a sealed envelope was handed to Benedict. With a flicker of annoyance, he opened it, his expression darkening as he read. Inside were legal subpoenas, referencing Cassandra's evidence of unethical financial practices tied to her forced medical procedure. This pointed to a possible misuse of company funds, adding another layer of potential scandal to Stone Innovations. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Whispers of embezzlement and cover-up floated through the room. Furious, Benedict slammed the boardroom table, shouting accusations at Cassandra and even at Vanessa, who was conspicuously absent from the meeting. He insisted he'd been framed and that this was all a ploy to sabotage him, but the board saw through the tantrum. By the time the meeting ended, they announced they were launching an independent investigation, leaving Benedict sputtering with indignation. Outside the boardroom, reporters had gathered after catching wind of the meeting. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust toward Benedict, who hid behind his PR rep and security detail. For a moment, he paused to put on a defiant smile, trying to salvage the confidence he'd once exuded with ease. But his heart pounded in panic. The empire he had painstakingly built was shaking at its foundations, and he was powerless to stop the collapse. Vanessa, sensing the inevitable downfall, began covertly withdrawing from her entanglement with Benedict. She hosted a last hurrah party at a swanky penthouse downtown, celebrating her newest real estate acquisition. Benedict was conspicuously absent, busy scrambling to control the crisis at Stone Innovations. Gossip swirled among the attendees. Was Vanessa losing faith in her once powerful partner? Behind the scenes, she arranged secret meetings with legal advisors and financial consultants, making sure her assets were protected from any blowback that might arise from Benedict's predicament. She also started attending events alone, her manner cold and aloof when asked about Benedict's legal battles. Some suspected betrayal, others whispered about an impending breakup. Only Vanessa knew the extent of her calculation. She had extracted almost everything she could from Benedict, his connections, some strategic funds, and valuable business intel. Now she was positioning herself to emerge unscathed as his empire threatened to collapse. Cassandra, observing the headlines, felt a complicated mix of vindication and sadness. She never wanted anyone to suffer unduly, but she couldn't deny the relief in seeing Benedict face accountability. In therapy, she discussed these conflicting emotions, understanding that it was part of her healing to feel empathy for the man she once loved, but also relief at not being trapped under his dominion anymore. Meanwhile, her legal team grew more confident with each new piece of evidence that surfaced. including statements from Stone Innovations employees who had been bullied or coerced by Benedict. The puzzle was coming together, a picture of a tyrannical boss who would stop at nothing to maintain his image of invincibility. The forced abortion, once just a heartbreaking secret, now stood as a key chapter in a pattern of manipulative and abusive behavior. Cassandra felt both justice and heartbreak as this narrative unraveled on a stage far bigger than she ever imagined. On a brisk afternoon, Benedict found himself standing before the looming marble columns of a courthouse, bracing for a significant hearing in the divorce proceedings. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing every angle of his tense expression. Across the foyer, he spotted Cassandra, poised but visibly emotional. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. He remembered the young woman he once adored, so full of hope and kindness. The memory stung, replaced quickly by his mounting anger at her betrayal. Inside the courtroom, Cassandra's lawyer presented the decisive evidence, financial records, testimonials from clinic staff, and even Lydia's statements. With composure, Cassandra spoke about the emotional toll of being coerced into the abortion and how Benedict's threats had left her feeling powerless. Her voice trembled when she described the sorrow of losing her baby, but a quiet strength kept her from breaking down completely. Benedict's legal team attempted to discredit her, painting her as opportunistic and unstable. They argued that their client was a busy entrepreneur, that the abortion decision was mutual, and that Cassandra's claims were exaggerated to secure a hefty settlement. Yet, the more they insisted, the more the weight of evidence undercut their arguments. The judge, attentive and stern, asked pointed questions about Benedict's financial irregularities and the nature of his relationship with Vanessa. By the hearing's end, Benedict stood grim-faced, no longer the commanding figure he once was. Outside the courthouse, reporters fired questions at him, pressing for statements on both the divorce and Stone Innovations troubles. He offered no comment, ducking into a black SUV that sped away before further humiliation could unfold. For Cassandra, this moment marked a turning point. Whether or not she would receive a just settlement was still uncertain, but she felt an undeniable shift. The truth had finally been spoken aloud in a court of law. As Benedict's personal life unraveled in court, Stone Innovations faced its day of reckoning as well. A series of damaging articles appeared in the New York Times, exposing the company's questionable financial practices. Whistleblowers stepped forward, corroborating allegations that Benedict had used company accounts to finance lavish personal expenses, including hush money for sensitive matters. Amid the swirling controversy, the stock price plummeted and investor confidence evaporated. Simultaneously, the board's independent investigation reached damning conclusions. Benedict's leadership had compromised the firm's integrity. A second emergency meeting was called. This time, board members arrived with grim faces, prepared to make a decisive move. After a tense, back-and-forth debate, punctuated by Benedict's furious denials, they voted to remove him as CEO. Benedict erupted in anger, slamming his fist on the table and hurling accusations at everyone from the CFO to the marketing director. Security had to escort him out of the building, in full view of gawking employees who had once revered him as an unstoppable force. The spectacle was humiliating and final. Within days, Stone Innovations named an interim CEO and initiated negotiations with major partners to stabilize the company. The press devoured the story, framing it as the colossal fall of a tech titan undone by hubris and scandal. Suddenly, Benedict's once luminous aura was tainted by public disgrace. His calls to friends in high places often went unanswered, and potential investors turned their backs. He felt the sting of isolation like never before. Meanwhile, Vanessa ghosted him entirely. She moved to another penthouse, this one in Chicago, under the pretense of expanding her family's real estate ventures. Her phone number changed, her social media wiped of any trace of Benedict. For a man who once controlled his destiny with iron confidence, this abrupt abandonment was the cruelest blow of all. With his reputation in tatters, Benedict found himself holed up in a smaller, gloomy apartment he'd purchased years ago. Gone were the days of penthouse parties, chauffeur-driven limousines, and invitations to the most exclusive gatherings. He paced the worn carpets, ruminating over how swiftly his kingdom had crumbled. Lawsuits demanded millions. The divorce case was leaning in Cassandra's favor, and the media labeled him a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition. Desperate for a lifeline, he tried contacting Vanessa, only to be met with automated messages that her number was no longer in service. In a final act of desperation, he showed up at her last known residence, a doorman building, only to be turned away. There was no record of Vanessa Harrington living there. All that remained of their liaison were mocking online articles chronicling their whirlwind romance. In those lonely weeks, Benedict tasted the bitter fruit of isolation. He scrolled through social media, watching old acquaintances celebrate successes and milestones. They had all moved on, their worlds unaffected by his downfall. He realized, perhaps for the first time, how empty his pursuit of power had left him. Late at night, he felt pangs of regret, a phantom ache for the wife he'd wronged, the child he had never met, and the friendships he had forsaken. Rumor had it that even his staunchest supporters were distancing themselves to salvage their own reputations. Without corporate influence or social clout, Benedict found himself reliant on a dwindling bank account, frozen assets, and mounting legal fees accelerated his descent into near financial ruin. Pride once defined him, but now it fed his loneliness. In these agonizing hours, the spectre of his past misdeeds rose up, mocking him with the relentless echo of choices he could never undo. For Cassandra, life had taken a more hopeful turn. Her divorce settlement, while not yet finalized, looked promising due to the overwhelming evidence of emotional abuse and financial manipulation. Even if she didn't receive a colossal sum, her newfound literary success became a source of stability. Her manuscript, retitled A Phoenix Rising, captured the attention of a respected publishing house. Within a few months, she signed a book deal, paving a way to a future she could have scarcely imagined. In her personal life, the healing process continued. She moved into a cozy 2-bedroom apartment, where she turned one room into a writing studio. On the walls, she placed motivational quotes and photographs from happier childhood memories. Though the spectre of the abortion lingered in her heart, therapy had helped her gradually find peace with her complicated emotions, grief, loss, and the blossoming sense that she could still lead a fulfilling life. Marisol remained a constant presence, celebrating every small milestone with her. Sometimes they'd laugh about the old days when Cassandra was a shy, lit student and Benedict a flamboyant businessman, never guessing their paths would cross so cataclysmically. Despite the trials, Cassandra felt a quiet gratitude. She had discovered her own strength in the face of relentless adversity. Occasionally, news of Benedict's downfall would flash across her screen. A lawsuit settlement here, a lost investor there. She found herself no longer consumed by anger or longing for revenge. Instead, she simply hoped he might learn something from his ordeal, if only to prevent the same agony from befalling others. As for Vanessa, her name surfaced in real estate circles now and then, but Cassandra gave it no further thought. She had shed that world of deceit like an old coat, stepping forward into a gentler, more authentic life. Several months later, Cassandra's divorce was finalized. The court awarded her a significant financial settlement, enough to ensure she could focus on her writing without worrying about day-to-day stability. Beyond the money, The judge granted her a moral victory, acknowledging the emotional harm inflicted by Benedict's coercion. In a concluding statement, the judge admonished Benedict, reminding him of the grave consequences of disregarding the sanctity of personal choice. Shortly after the settlement, Cassandra's debut novel hit bookstore shelves. It garnered glowing reviews, praised for its unflinching exploration of heartbreak, betrayal, and resilience. To her astonishment, it quickly climbed bestseller lists in the region. She arranged a small book signing event at a local indie bookstore, a far cry from the glittering penthouses she once inhabited. Yet, when she saw the modest crowd gathered to hear her read, she felt more genuine fulfillment than she ever had in those days of superficial luxury. On the very same evening, Benedict Stone sat in his dimly lit apartment, boxes of legal documents and bills strewn across the worn carpet. An alert on his phone flashed an article about Cassandra's book success. He nearly swiped it away, but curiosity made him skim the piece. It praised the emotional depth of the novel, hinting that its raw authenticity likely stemmed from personal experience. As he read, a strange mixture of remorse and envy coursed through him. Everything he had valued, wealth, power, social acclaim, had vanished. Cassandra, the woman he once dismissed, was blossoming in her new life. For the first time since his downfall began, he allowed a tear to slip down his cheek. In that solitary moment, Benedict experienced a glimmer of realization. Perhaps he had destroyed not only his marriage, but also the chance at becoming the kind of man who could have been genuinely happy. And so ends the cautionary tale of Benedict Stone, once a titan of industry, now a tragic figure unraveling under the weight of his own misdeeds. His forced decision upon Cassandra and his betrayal for the sake of a ruthless mistress led him down a path of scandal, isolation, and regret. Meanwhile, Cassandra rose from the ashes of heartbreak, reclaiming her voice as a successful author and champion of her own destiny. Her story reminds us that strength can be born from unimaginable pain, and that true fulfillment comes from integrity, empathy, and resilience. If you found Cassandra's journey moving or learned something from Benedict's downfall, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. By supporting these stories, you help amplify the powerful message that karma eventually finds us all, and that hope, even in our darkest hours, can illuminate a new and better path forward.